This final session is about routes to market. There's so many things that we've covered today, and thank you all, by the way, for all your contributions in the last session. It was brilliant. This session, you'll recognise Chitra, who was here earlier. She didn't get introduced properly earlier because she had to rush in. So just so you know that Chitra has just so much experience. She's got 25 years plus probably of experience in fashion and product development. So when it comes to routes to market and thinking about how you're going to actually find those people that we've been talking about now for most of the afternoon, I can't think of anyone better. But she also has a delightful panel, which has got so much experience on it that I'm just eager to hear what they all have to say. So Chitra, over to you.
On. Hi, I've been told that I've got a squeaky voice, so I have to speak a bit loudly. Well, I'm actually 25 years experience is great, but what's happening now is that the industry is changing so much, actually, and the retail is changing in itself. So actually we've got to think completely of different and new models that are happening, and that's what this panel is here today. So I think they're better at introducing themselves rather than me introducing them. So I'll pass the mic over.
Hi, my name is Stefan Siegel. I'm the founder of Not Just a Label, a website or a company that helps young designers to grow their brands. We have various free activities for designers, and that starts with so free promotion tools on the site. It goes into online retail, showcasing events around the world, and we work with a lot of institutional bodies to help these designers grow.
Hi, Dean Fankhauser from Nuji. Nuji is a social curation platform with a focus on high-end fashion retailers.
Hi, I'm Nigel. I'm one of the founders of Nibble. Nibble is an online personal styling site. Go on the site, take the quiz, find out your style, and get our stylist recommendations.
Hi, I'm Jo. I'm the editor of Asos Marketplace, and we're a site that's attached to asos.com, and it's a platform where anybody can set up and sell fashion.
Hello, I'm Rachel. I am from Lyst. My Twitter handle is not StylePageRach, it's actually Lyst. That's my old startup. But I work for Lyst. Lyst is a personalized shopping company. Follow all the designers and brands that you love.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, it's not squeaky anymore. Okay, so my first question really is about the customer. Because business models have changed so much, and the customer seems to be at the center of that. So how would you see that sort of, how is it now, and how is that going to evolve in the future?
Yeah, so if the question's regarding sort of retail and how that's changing and how the customer's changed with that. So I think if you were to sum up retail and what it is, you can split it into three areas. So you have the sort of curation part, you have the marketing part, and you have distribution. And I think the top two there, so marketing and curation, is being disrupted now. And that's being done through platforms like Nuji, like Lyst, like Pinterest. But the third one with distribution, I think that's yet to be disrupted. But I think things like 3D printing and stuff like that going forward, which is much further down the track, will change that completely. So I think that the role of the consumer, based on those two things, will completely change as well, especially the first two. When it comes to curation and marketing, that will actually be done through the consumer, not necessarily through the retailer. And then going forward with the distribution part, I think that would be done more on the consumer side with 3D printing going forward as well.
Okay, with curation, how would you see that developing? Maybe Rachel, you'd like to?
How do I see it developing? Well, I think that from what we've seen on Lyst, that people love to create stories around what they're thinking about and what they're wanting to buy, whether that's with photos, with products, or influences by their favorite bloggers and by their favorite editors. So I think there's a lot of different things that are influencing people's shopping decisions. So trying to bring that into one place where there's not such a disconnect between seeing something in a magazine and then buying it, but kind of creating this experience that's a mixture of editorial and commerce, I guess.
In terms of editorial and commerce, I think that there seems to be this need to have a community and to have a link. So it's interesting to see the role of the consumer with your organisation as well, and sort of how do you play that out, or how do you control that? Can you control it? Do you prompt it? How do you manage that conversation?
So I think the consumer's always going to be in charge. The consumer's always going to be talking about you know, get over it. I think that the challenge for particularly the bigger brands is around how do you manage to maintain a relationship that feels personal but yet is scalable and is true to the brand. And I think one of the reasons why the bigger brands have struggled, particularly with some of the social media platforms like Twitter and to some extent Facebook, is they are inherently very personal communication channels. It's quite hard to be authentic as a brand whilst feeling the need to be personal. And I think it plays quite well to some of the smaller boutiques and designers, because you can be far more authentically individual and personal. I think it's still a challenge that not all of the big brands have worked out how to play well. And it's one of the things that we're trying to work out. How do we, as we grow, manage to keep that feeling of a personal connection whilst scaling that to thousands and millions of users?
Yeah, just to build on that, that's something that we're actually seeing in our platform as well. So the top maybe 20 retailers are actually boutiques, even though we have large retailers on our system. And if you look at how products are traveling as well, it's not necessarily H&M products that are popular. In fact, they're the least popular. It's the small boutiques and their curation of very high-end, really unique products that's rising to the top. And that's being done through people. It's not these large stores sort of throwing products down people's throats. Which I guess you can relate to the music industry in the 90s. That's what was happening there, but with the internet and music being shared socially and all that sort of stuff, music travels very differently now socially, and the way that it rises is very different. I think the same thing's happening with shopping and fashion.
I think as well there's just so much fashion online now. It's hard to talk about it as a whole, but like the cream will always rise, but also it kind of comes back to that curation and editorial thing, because you can be so overwhelmed with product. You're really looking to identify with the way that a site, if it is a curation site, allows you to interact with that, or if it is more of an editorial site, the way that you identify with the voice behind that site, or if it is a shopping site, the product that they offer. And with a platform like ours, obviously we try and give spotlight to the boutiques and individual sellers within it so that they can interact with the customers themselves. And wherever it's people interacting online that are also providing a service, customer service, that's always going to influence the conversation too. So when you get smaller boutiques, they are, as you were saying, having those really personal conversations and are able to do that through social. And that's always going to influence the content that they produce. And it does create more meaningful relationships.
What's really come out of this is, the words meaningful, authentic, and I think those words obviously mean a lot in terms of conversation. What about the brand itself? How does the brand sort of interpret, or how do they translate those words into the actual product? Is there anything you can say about that?
Well, I think we live in times where there's too much of everything, and it's and we have less money to spend as well, and I think the fundamental driver is value for money, and I think people are looking to actually slightly more and more invest into pieces and keep them also for longer, and therefore I think as soon as consumers start making decisions, and online we're speaking to very well-informed customers now, these people want a story attached to each piece. So the era of bling, the era of logos is slightly in decline. I think we're going more into the direction of of finding new ways of exclusivity, or we've seen it in, as you said, in music, but also in the hospitality industry. Luxury is seen as something different now. We don't go to the Hilton anymore, but we go to the boutique hotel. And in fashion, we want to see, we want a similar experience. And I think it's very easy for younger brands to sort of translate their story, and because the story is there. And if you buy something from a young designer from Ukraine and you sit in New York, then you have a unique relationship with that designer. I think that the story usually gets lost in between, and there it is important to editorialize the content, as we say.
And how would you advise how to do that to a designer?
I was going to say, I agree a lot with the kind of the way that fashion's moving in terms of people really want to see quality. But social media is amazing because you can filter through all the noise and you can really reach your target customer. And, you know, bloggers and influencers are showing, you know, they're creating these paths for you already. So you can kind of find the person that's wearing the demographic which you're trying to reach and then kind of go from there. I think there's, using social media, there's a lot of ways to kind of target those people directly. And it might be the person that loves a small brand, it might be the person that likes the big brand. But there are very clear ways to kind of filter through that, I think, using strategies of like understanding where those people are online and how they're talking to each other.
And were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, there's one example that I'd like to bring up. That I'm not sure if any of you know of Joey Roth and the ceramic speakers that he produced about 2 years ago. Anyway, he sold them on his own website. He didn't even have it going to a retailer. And because they were absolutely beautiful and really unique, they were marketed so well on these social websites, if you will, where he didn't need a retailer to actually push those things. And they became viral. He sold thousands and thousands. Now he has his own brand, he has his own store, and it was from one product that just traveled and went very, very viral on these platforms. So I think that there's definitely some opportunities there.
Yeah, and I think actually that conversation is really taking precedence over anything really a brand can say. And I don't know if anyone's heard of brand tags, actually. And, you know, that's a conversation around a brand like Hermès or another big multinational brand. And actually that conversation is so much broader than the brand itself can create. Would you have any sort of guidance or direction that you could give to new designers and to how they can try and direct that?
The first thing I'd say is don't direct it. Just let the conversations happen. I'd say join in. You know, even if the discussions are bad, just be there, be honest, be transparent. I think earlier today someone was talking about getting negative feedback online. I mean, the worst thing you can do is just sit and ignore it. Well, no, the worst thing you can do is delete those negative comments. But the second worst thing is just to ignore it. Just be open, transparent, and honest, and engage in the debate. Those conversations are going to happen. If they're not happening online, you can guarantee they're happening offline. So it's far better to be involved in the discussion and the conversation. And certainly in my experience, any time we've done that, what you do is you encourage your advocates to join in the debate as well, who might be sitting there a little bit shy, kind of thinking, oh, I'm not so sure about getting involved here. But if they see you standing up for yourself, they'll also stand up for you as well.
I think talking about feedback and conversations online, I think protecting your online reputation is a really key thing for any emerging brand, or if you're new, or, you know, it's so easy to be so defensive about feedback when you're starting out just because you haven't had so much of it before and you see negative feedback as like the worst thing that can possibly happen, when it's really just a platform for you to listen to and grow with. And if you're continuing to make sales and you're continuing with amazing customer service, that past history will be erased the more that you grow. But it's, whilst it shouldn't keep you up at night, it's something to always consider, because whenever someone Googles you, you want to make sure that the conversations that people can see, whether it be on Twitter or increasingly on like Google Places, if you have a physical store as well as that backs up your kind of e-commerce presence, you always want to make sure that those top ones are as positive as they can. And the same rules apply as they do on the high street, that the customer, even though it's difficult when you're starting out and everything seems to cost the earth, the customer is always right, because you have to almost see it as like a marketing cost, even if you're making losses in terms of making sure that if something hasn't arrived, you're reshipping and things like that. And obviously individual circumstances will always apply. You have to kind of see it as a marketing cost because you want to protect that reputation.
Okay, I think that conversation obviously around the brand is something that has to be managed in some way. What about the role of the retailer and how that's changing, and how retailers actually manage as a backup to an online store, if that's possible, or in some cases you don't even have you don't even have an actual store. So how do you manage that balance?
Well, I think it is a balance, and it is a balance between offline and online. And I think I'm the first one to say online is not the solution to everything. And I think that there should be a mix. And I think what needs to happen in both worlds, that I think, and I hate the word shopping, but I think that the process of actually going and purchase items has to become an experience again, and that's what we lost along the way. And I think it's right that certain high street retailers are struggling at the moment. It's right that so many online stores are closing this year, because nobody's actually thinking about adding a value to the actual process or to the experience. And that has to come back, and that's where we're back in the brand story. That's where we're back at sort of investing in pieces. And I think, you know, retailers offline and online, they will survive if they do something different, if they provide an additional value to the customer.
It just made me think of a story. We were both at a conference I think 2 weeks ago, Decoded Fashion, and Motor Operandi was there. I don't know if you know of them. They're pretty cool. Online company that sells basically clothes right off the runway, and they are opening their first kind of pop-up shop in Brazil, and it's really interesting to see how they're taking their experience offline to give people this experience of what they're trying to create online, and I think that we'll probably see more of that, because it gives people a really interesting way to connect to people in real life, which I think is invaluable.
I also just think not with so much high-end retail, but with slightly more, you know, startup brands, and maybe you've just got a line or you've got a boutique. Often, it's not a choice, and it's very much, as you were saying, a balance. It's just another door, another way to sell, and it's about those two platforms, one being a physical location and one being an online location, speaking to each other and making sure that the story is the same across them and that they support each other. But it's just having another way for people to buy, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, I think that there's some big opportunities, but it's also pretty scary what's happening in retail at the moment in regards to showrooming. So it started off with music, books, and all that sort of stuff, and you saw what happened to the bookstores, you saw what happened to all the media stores, and I think to a lesser degree, something similar is going to happen to fashion stores. By showrooming, if you're not familiar with that term, it basically means you walk into a store, you see something you like, you scan the barcode, or you see something, you take the brand name or whatever, and you buy it online. Now, so basically what retailers are becoming is just a showroom, and everything's being bought online. I'm sure a few of you have probably done it, and I think that trend's only going to increase. So I think that's actually really scary for a lot of these retailers, and as I said, in about 3 years' time, you'll probably see that a lot more. But it also means there's a lot of opportunities as well, and to rethink what the role is of a retailer. But it's important that I think we identify that as quickly as possible and try to make sure that it's not too negative.
Actually, that's just where my next idea was going, is this idea of opportunities. And for startups, where would you see the opportunities are for startups? How should they start online?
Sorry, I'm talking too much. I think it depends on. Do you mean start? I mean, there's different opportunity for startups and also fashion designers or fashion startups, if you will. Going back to this Joey Roth example, I think that has highlighted a massive opportunity of what he's done. So he's opened a really simple online store with nothing, and he knew how to use these social networks and these new mediums to really promote his stuff because he produced beautiful things. And that, for me, is an example of how there's some opportunities to do some interesting things as well. So as a startup, can you look at what he's done and build on that model and make people build a platform for people like him? I mean, that's essentially what we're looking to do longer term. But I think that's where a lot of this could go, where instead of there being a retailer, it could one day be designer to shopper using marketing channels, these social marketing channels. But the problem with that is then the role of a designer is completely different. You're not only designing clothes, but you also have to know a thing or two about the internet and social media. You have to know how to I don't know, do accounting, whatever. So there's a bunch of things that a retailer takes care of for these designers that they may have to take up, but there's also some big opportunities as well.
I just say wherever you start, just start at the beginning, because if you start, you will learn. You learn something about what you're good at, where you're doing well, and where to focus next. So I almost wouldn't worry about where to start. I'd just say start. I mean, Style Nibble started as a Survey Monkey quiz stuck up on a website, you know, and it was literally just to test a theory about something that we wanted to do. And that's how we started, and we built from that. So just start. I think that someone earlier today talked about over-planning. So just start. You'll learn something by starting.
I agree. I worked at a startup before Lyst that did pretty well, and we had no budget. And we were in Palo Alto, where there's a lot of competition. So Facebook, Google, and now Pinterest, who was 3 doors down from us and were tiny when we started. And we thought we were a competitor to them, which didn't happen. But it's amazing what grassroots marketing can do. I mean, just really starting locally, finding out who would be really, truly interested in what you're doing, talking to them, getting feedback from them. I remember like our core users, I became friends with them because they helped us develop our product over months, you know, and it was by email, bringing them in the office, getting their feedback, and just saying, why are you using our product? What is it about it that you have so many different platforms that you're using? Why are you coming back to us? And that information is so powerful, and people overlook it, and they want to have these glamorous marketing, you know, ideas, which I think are important, but you have to go back to why someone's using your product, why they keep coming back. And if you know that and you are genuine about caring about that, I think it makes a really big difference.
Just if you're starting up your first e-commerce store, if you're a designer, just to echo what you're saying in terms of that aspect of it, I think the places where you can really make a difference when you're starting out, and it's exactly about like getting in and getting going, and particularly as you're likely not going to have a big budget. Images spread so much faster than words, so if you're going to spend time and money on one thing, you know, you can sit at home watching the telly and be replying to your social media replies, but if you need to get a team together to pull off like a really good photo shoot, and I'm not talking Vogue, it's just take the time to, you know, people aren't going to be able to touch your product if it's online. So that's the one thing that's going to really sell it for you. So if you're going to spend a lot of time and effort on one area, it's get some really good images together that also tell your brand story, because you can kind of kill 2 birds with one stone there.
If you take decent images, you will be better than 90% of all of the retailers out there. Honestly, their image quality is appalling for most fashion retailers. So get that right, and you'll already be better than 90% of the fashion retailers out there.
I think going to the e-commerce retail conference, that actually what came through was the importance of image and content. Is there a particular type of image? Because the flat image of clothing, is that what is actually appealing to a consumer, or is it an image in a particular sort of stance, or how do you deal with images? Net-a-Porter does a reasonable job of sort of doing the 360 of an image and zooming. Is there any advice on that?
I give you my personal opinion on what I've seen worked. I mean, I think that you need to show lots of different perspectives of the product, just raw product. You need to show what the quality of the material is like, because that's the one thing that consumers can't pick up very well online. So if you're not showing what the material quality is like, what the thread's like, what the stitching's like, then I think you're just giving people a reason not to buy it online, not to delay. I think model shots, look shots can be quite important. They set a tone for the site as well. They're probably not as critical as the other two, but I think all three, and you've got a real winner.
On Marketplace, so I deal with this day in, day out, because I essentially window dress the site, and we made the decision when we were starting up that because we deal with so many people that are just starting up that might not have big photography budgets and things like that, we took the decision to the only way we could kind of control the visual and the user journey of the site is to set a rule that was to have all of the photographs taken in natural daylight. So we tell everybody that's going to sell on the site that this is what we'd like you to do. And it might be that changes. That's a real barrier for people because we also deal with people that are literally, I could sell this shirt tonight if I'm bored of it. So it's going to be dark. So that's a big problem for me. So it might end up being a flexible rule, but for our boutiques that really take it seriously, it's a benefit for a few reasons. One, you see the true color of items and you're able to see the detail more. Two, we're dealing with high traffic from Asos.com, which is why we work as a platform for smaller boutiques, because we're giving them that traffic. But it's a really harsh change in user experience if you've come from everything kind of looking the same to a page where one thing's taken with flash, one thing's taken at night. So it helps like thread together and go some way to editorialize essentially user-generated content. So we're still working on it, and there are various challenges involved, but that was a decision we made when we were first getting going as a way of trying to make it at least so people could see the products that they were buying in a natural light.
I think it always comes back to the product. That's what I'm hearing here. It always comes back to the quality of the product and the story that comes through the product and what the product is. I recently heard a presentation by Honest Buy. Honest Buy is a company set up by Bruno Peters, who's the ex-creative director of Hugo Boss. And his company has transparent costing right through from the thread, from the fabric, right through to and who's made the garment and who was it sampled by, etc. Do you sense that there's a greater sort of transparency throughout the sort of online and offline business? I mean, he's a one-off at the moment, but I sense that it's something that's emerging. I just would like your opinion on that.
I think personally it goes back to what we were talking about with the story. So if you're going to be buying fast fashion at a lower price, then you're not expecting so much behind it. And that's potentially a different demographic. Obviously there is crossover, but if you are going to invest in pieces, you're looking to know where it came from. You want to know that it's unique to you because the market is so saturated and you see people in similar outfits, again with like certain retailers selling so much and really taking over different areas of the market. If you're going to make that extra spend, and in the same way as that, you want to know where it came from and you want to kind of justify how much that you're going to pay for it, and that's where a model like that would really do that.
So it's not something that you'd see as a massively growing trend?
I think it's always going to be niche. I think fast fashion, sadly, most people would really rather not know where it's come from, often. Because if they knew the stories, they probably wouldn't buy it.
Well, yeah, I was going to say something very similar. Maybe it didn't sound that well, but yeah, I think fast fashion kills that part of fashion where we're in, and I think we speak to early adopters, and Bruno is a good friend of mine. He's struggling as well, and it's a sort of consumer education process. And when we started our online shop, we received many emails of people asking, why does design have to be so exclusive in terms of pricing? Why does a ring have to cost £150? And we usually try to sort of explain them that, the designer probably doesn't even cover his own sort of hourly rates and the expenses that the designer had to produce that piece. So I think that there's a huge element of actually going back to educate consumers and tell them what the real value is. And I think that's just something that has been forgotten a bit.
Yeah, and I think we often come back to this issue of pricing because it's very difficult for, I know my students actually dealing with this whole idea of pricing, and they always forget to price in their own expertise and their own work into a product. But, how do your new designers manage that process? Well,
I mean, on our platform, I think we're close to 10,500 selected designers now. So we see completely different pricing models. And we have designers, especially designers in the Middle East, who work the business model is completely different to a designer based maybe in East London. And pricing changes, but I think there's also some positive elements that designers, by going straight to the consumers or using platforms like ours, they can increase the profit margin, and therefore they actually profit from the final retail price, and they're not sort of going through the whole sort of, call it showroom, wholesale, and then retailer process. And so there are advantages, and I think designers overall can earn more if they're smart and if they're sort of opening up to a global target group.
Mm-hmm. Is there any issue with harmonizing pricing if you're looking at global markets?
Well, in our case, no, because it is really investing into pieces, and we hardly have ever more than 3 or 4 pieces of the same model or type of clothing. So that's not a big issue. We don't have these problems of designers selling in 20 other different stores, and therefore we need to keep the price the same. And that sort of, we have exclusivities with these designers, and that makes it quite easy for us. But I see, there's an increasing problem with brands we're consulting now that sell in China, that sell in South America, and of course there's different sort of tax implications, there's different pricing models. Yeah.
Joe, how does Asos deal with that?
Well, I think the same kind of situation in that, because it's an international site and people will be selling all over the world, it's kind of in a couple of ways. People can always Google and find out. So we're dealing with a lot with smaller brands, so the chances are they may only have their online presence through us, so that's fine. And then the way that they adjust it for different markets is through shipping prices. That takes in a lot of like the tax implications there. So we have a shop local feature, which is being increasingly used because, for instance, there's massive amounts of problems with shipping to South America. Russia's almost a no-go zone in terms of shipping. I just recently learned that eBay you basically can't ship there or sell if you're from Russia because it's so difficult. And then if you do have other online presence, people can Google and they'll always, they might have even come there through Google Shops so they can see where your product is elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But then a good way, you can kind of turn it into a marketing advantage by doing promo codes and things like that, and you're almost competing against yourself if you have like a promo code on a certain site, and you can kind of play yourself off against yourself in certain ways.
So pricing isn't really an issue in terms of handling that, because we had some questions on pricing earlier, but obviously it doesn't seem to be an issue. Would it be sort of easier then, you'd recommend a designer, obviously you'd recommend a designer to go through your sites rather than launching on their own? Is it possible for designers to sort of do both?
I think you can definitely do both. I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier about the fact that if you are a designer, that doesn't make you a web developer or a marketing expert. So that's why you would use these platforms, so that people can find you. And that's what it's just about, getting found and getting a presence on there as quick as you can. And particularly if you are very protective of your brand space and everything like that, you still have to create a profit somehow. So you might get to the point where you can then bring it all in-house, have your own little e-commerce platform and sell your ceramic speakers and things like that. But you need some kind of capital to build, unless you've got loads of investment, and then great, good for you. But yeah, something that's easy to set up and get going with, just kind of dive in.
I think the biggest problem with creating your own sort of .com is discovery. So let's say you sell a certain product that you've made yourself or certain brands. Problem is, if I type in a brand that I like or category or product that I'm looking for, there's only really one distribution platform, that's Google. But it's always the same 5 or 6 retailers that turn up on Google. The long tail of retailers, all the small to medium guys, hundreds of pages down the list, and they're never going to be discovered. Facebook isn't going to work for you. You're not going to get discovered through that. Twitter's not going to help you. There's really nothing out there. So I think that's one of the main benefits on building on an existing platform if you're a smaller fashion designer or retailer, because I think that's really an uphill battle.
I totally agree. You can get a website built. I mean, all of you could put an online store up this afternoon, this evening, but there's no Field of Dreams. There's no Kevin Costner. If you build it, they will not come. So you've got to find a way to get traffic, and I think that's where all of our platforms help. All of our businesses, and I used to work for eBay, the value proposition is that they will come if you put it on those platforms.
And in terms of the brands that you're looking for, is it any advice that you could give to budding designers about the areas of growth in terms of product categories or in terms of particular positioning, particular segments of the market?
Well, I mean, what we can see, and I think that's a product of recession as well, is that people want to keep items for longer again, and that's going back to the items that you can keep for longer is jewelry, accessories, shoes, and so on. And that's why I think if we look at the sort of recent sales figures, even of bigger brands, the issue is the ready-to-wear is not that growing that fast anymore, and then you have a huge rise in accessories, in fashion jewelry, in very smaller pieces that give you a feeling of handmade pieces that you can keep for longer. Watches, you want to keep that, you don't throw that you don't throw it away next season, and sort of that's a specific area. But then again, I think the designers who sell the best, or the designers who sort of tap into these fields, usually come from clothing, and therefore I think if you now decide that, you know, scarves are selling really well and I'm just going to become a scarf designer, we have so many on our platform. The other day we decided we're not accepting any scarf designers anymore because it's so easy to become a scarf designer, and therefore I think it still takes a really good fashion designer to break through these days. And
it's an enormous market. There's so many niches that, you know, that really, I just say, do what you're passionate about and make it work. If you make products with love, you will find customers that love them. You know, part of what we do is try and identify the right products for the right people, and sometimes we get it wrong. We had one product we put against one group of people and they absolutely adored it, and we put it against another and they absolutely hated it. And so, you know, you will find your niche. You know, if you're small, I almost wouldn't worry about trying to pick where the trends are, because you will find, you know, if you build a product with love, I'm sure you will find a good audience for it.
Well, I think that's great advice, and it's very positive in the sense that it really pulls designers back into what their strengths are and finding their own niche. In terms of the future, how do you see that developing? I know this is incredibly difficult. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? But how do you see these online platforms evolving and working with startup designers or new designers? No one wants to talk about their next strategy.
I'll take this one. No kidding. I think, I don't know about the future, but for us, for Lyst, there's a huge increase in mobile transactions. So just kind of the connection between a purchase being made online, a purchase being made in store, online, on your phone, it's all very blurry, and it will continue to become that way. I think 20% of our traffic this year was mobile. It was 10% in January, it's 20% now. We predict it to be 30 by January of 2013. So kind of understanding where people are when they are making decisions to start to shop something. I remember I was like last week, I was at a black tie event, and I was sitting getting my hair done, and I didn't have a dress, and I didn't have time to go home, so I looked on my phone and was looking through all the different options. I'd gone through Westfield, I couldn't find anything. And all the options were online for me, and I ended up making that purchase online, which I'd never done before. But I think that there's going to be a big change in the way that people start to shop and when they make those decisions. That would be...
I would, completely echo that. I think whoever can really nail the discovery that's unique to you. So whoever can, there's so much product that whoever can have the most of that under their umbrella and then really nail, however that becomes, whether it's like integrating with your calendar so it knows what you're doing and suggests products, or whether it's just like knowing where you've clicked and creating some kind of software that really knows you and can recommend the right products for you so that you're finding things faster. Whoever can nail that kind of journey is going to really define where that personalization, personal shopping goes to online.
Yeah, just to go back on the mobile thing, that's really important for us as well. But one thing I would say is that I'm not sure exactly how that's going to plan out, because I don't believe that there's going to be an app for every store. I don't believe that people are going to download an app for every store they shop in. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic. I think things like Passbook, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with that, but it's Apple Passbook. Maybe look into it a little bit, but it'll be done through one system for all stores. Maybe it'll be that, maybe it'll be something else, but I think that there's a massive opportunity there, and that'll be the next sort of big thing. And I think going further, this is probably a bit too futuristic, but the whole 3D printing thing absolutely fascinates me. So if you don't know much about it, it's worth checking out. I think that will be, once it really starts taking off, will disrupt retail and fashion more than anything, actually more than the internet itself. So yeah, really check that out. So. Yeah.
Well, 3D printing has actually been around, I think, for a few years, but it's really sort of coming out now. So I think the first 3D printer has been, or first batch of 3D printers has been sold in the States for about $900. when you think you'll be able to actually produce your own clothing and produce your own shoes in your own home, it would sort of save your problem when you don't have a dress to go out in for that evening. How do you think you as platforms may have 3D printers?
Yeah, I would love to go in that direction one day. I just sound like the biggest geek up here, but no, but I'm absolutely fascinated by it, and I think that there will be opportunities to think about doing those sorts of things, and the earlier you think about those, the better. What I find really interesting though is if you were to imagine, the Pirate Bay for fashion and 3D printing, I think that that's something that everybody should be thinking about as well. So, for example, one of you might design an amazing dress, but if that ends up on a website that I can download and print, that's not going to be very good. But there's some interesting opportunities too. So.
I'm a manufacturer originally, so I think 3D printing is really interesting, and I think it's most interesting in the innovation it will create and the types of clothing that will get designed. But I don't think it's going to replace some of the classic manufacturing techniques. A lot of the clothes that we're all wearing are using manufacturing processes that have been around for centuries, and I don't see that changing. I think 3D printing might be interesting for certain types of new items, but I don't see it being more than a niche part of the market.
3D printing has also got major problems at the moment with soft materials. They can do hard materials, but not soft materials. Do you see sort of? I think 3D printing is interesting though, in terms of co-creation. How much are your customers involved in, or you designers and your customers involved in co-creation?
Well, I think one of the benefits of a platform that works with people that produce a smaller amount of items is that you can customize things more. So we're seeing a lot of items being sold, particularly gifts and things like that, where because you're speaking directly to the manufacturer, you can customize and engrave bracelets, or you can monogram stuff, and people love that. And I think that will definitely increase, and it goes back to that story and having something unique to you.
Do you think, your advice be for designers to sort of integrate that into their designs? That's a possibility of co-creation?
I mean, I think within the tech startup world, people recently have been obsessed with this idea of a lean startup, and the idea of minimum viable product of very, very quickly getting to a product for which there is a market. And I think that that idea of co-creation, of like working out very, very rapidly whether the stuff that you're doing there's a market for. I think you could apply that to the world of fashion, and I think see success more quickly than the 5 seasons that we heard talked about. Is a season too slow to actually work out whether you're getting, your designs are hitting it? I think it probably is.
Yeah, I think, fashion's certainly speeded up, and I think there is almost no season to the fashion now. The fashion business has traditionally always worked on 2, and then now it's kind of 8 and then 10, but there's almost no real start and finish to a season. So I think as designers, that's probably all fashion startups, is that notion of thinking about the next step, the incremental innovation, the sort of new ideas that you've got to bring in all the time. I can see hovering here, so I think probably, do we have to finish now? Yeah, okay. So thank you to everyone. Does anyone have a last comment before? Oh, sorry, questions? Forgot. Do we have any questions? Yes.
I just want to ask the panel to separate kind of what are people that's getting very lucky. So I don't know whether the designer that you guys mentioned that's getting a normal kind of social mentions are you find that incredibly lucky, or are there lessons that designers here really should be drawing to basically make it a skill rather than it's all about luck. If you try it enough times, maybe one mistake kind of process.
I think, thanks God, I think fashion still works in a way that it comes down to quality of design and creativity, and I would hate to say that it has anything to do with luck, and of course you have to be at the right place at the right time, but thanks God, I mean, even our scouts, they purely judge on creativity and nothing else.
Yeah, going back to that Joey Roth example, I don't think that was luck at all. I think that he just produced an amazing product that was really unique and that people wanted. And all it took was for a couple of people to spot it and add it, and it just spread. To date, that's our most popular product that's ever been on the site. And we have big brands as well as small brands, and this guy's just nothing. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really genuinely believe it's not to do with luck. I think it's to do with perseverance and beautiful design.
Hi, my name's Lynette from Tailored Few. We've heard a lot today about the online marketplace and fashion and design, and not a lot about fit. And I'm just interested in what the panel thinks about how the industry can address and make clothes better fitting for everybody, because I think that's certainly the online environment. It's one of the biggest issues for return factors, and how designers can maybe best address that.
Do you? Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about Asos rather than Marketplace just for a minute, because they're trialing something which goes back to that kind of, you have to appreciate offline, even if you are the most online of companies, which is a fit measuring tape, which they're sending out to customers and that you can apply to have. And I think that goes to show that, and they're working with all kinds of technology as well, where you'd put in previous things that you've bought and say how well they fit you, and that will inform future purchases. So I think there's a mix, again, of thinking about what you can tangibly do and have to kind of judge something that you can only see online. I think that there is to do with amazing cutting edge technology that will help that, and I also think free returns kind of helps that problem too.
Yeah, I just free returns. So I think that technology can help, but all the technology that I've seen that's tried to do anything with this is just incredibly clunky, and getting consumers to engage with it is terrible. I think the biggest thing most people could do is offer genuinely risk-free returns, and very, very few retailers do that. They will make you pay for the initial delivery charge unless you very strictly adhere to the distance selling regulations, which most people make it very difficult for you to do.
I just heard a story about there's a retailer that is expanding in China, and they deliver your product in 2 sizes to your door, and they wait for you while you try it on. I think that's genius.
That's great.
And that kind of goes back to old school thinking 100 years ago when someone would come and tailor your clothes to you. And I think that maybe that should be the direction which you're going, because I'd love that.
Do you have any more questions? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. A couple of months ago, I'm not sure where I read about it, whether it was a blog, they got some ladies' dresses, and it was a size X, and they measured it, and there was a huge discrepancy between different brands. I think, like, obviously book CDs you buy online, but clothes, a lot of us still prefer to try and... Do you think there'll be, in the UK or Europe, there'll be a standard sizing? Because I know in America years ago, because they didn't want people to feel sort of fat, if you like, the large they made a medium, and the extra large, they made smaller. Do you think there'll be, if they standardise the sizes, surely we'll buy more online, rather than me going into 3 different shops on the high street and working out what fits me? Do you think we're moving towards a standardisation of sizes, or?
No.
No. All right.
I also think people have loyalty with certain brands, and they know they're sizing with those brands a lot of the time. Would be my thought.
I think yes. I mean, I think we just work in a project and with London Culture Fashion, and it is about sort of, are we going down the route of creating all these sort of gimmicks on the website, or are we going into the direction of telling our 10,000 designers, here's a sort of guideline, and let's see if we can all sort of adhere to it. And I think there's a future there, and I think that makes more sense than having these virtual fitting rooms that nobody really likes. And so I mean, the young designers are all quite up for it, and we'll see. I think it's just a sort of it's not the designer wants to interpret the size 8 in Italy different than here, but it's also lifestyle. And every time we have designers going to, for example, India, and then they come back surprised saying there's different body shapes in India, and it's not the same in Italy, and it's not the same here. So it's more lifestyle or sort of design decision as well.
Just one
There's one. A question.
Regarding sizes, it was just an add-on to this another website called Wish Want Wear, which does hiring of clothes, and they send out 2 sizes whenever you order, say, a size 6. They ask you, do you think you would be a size 8 or a size 4? So they would send out size 6 and size 8 for a person, and they can just keep that and return whatever they don't need. So I think that answers your question in terms of fits, but it just comes down to logistics and infra in that way. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, well, thank you. I think we've got to finish there. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Chitra, and thank you to all of you as well for coming in, and especially it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you probably want to go home and have cups of tea and things. I've just got a few thank yous to make because it's been a great day. I hope you've all had a good day. I've learnt loads. First of all, just thank you to you for asking great questions, coming along and being part of what's been going on. But really, it's been made by all the speakers that we've had, not only in this panel, but there's still a few around the room, but also who are here this morning and earlier this afternoon. Chinwag team, can you stand up, those of you who are in the room? And Fiona, these are the guys that actually made it happen. Also, UKTI, who sponsored the event and made today possible. And we had the London College of Fashion, we've had Creative Skill Set, Creative Industries, Knowledge Transfer Network, lots and lots of people who've just partnered with us just to make today possible. So a big thank you to them. What else? I think that's pretty much. Oh, Sam.
So I was going to
Sam.
say thank you to all those people as well, and you've stolen my.
Yeah.
thunder.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I made notes. You see, that's my job.
I'd like to say thank you to Catherine. Have a round of applause for Catherine.
Oh.
I think I can safely say this is the most chatty audience I've seen at an event for ages, and it probably says something about the fashion industry, and about how creative you guys are as a collective group as well, which is really encouraging. Thank you to Catherine. There's 2 other things I was going to mention. 3 other things. I'll be very quick. One is UK Trade Investment are the folks that make this possible. And the way that they measure the fact that we're in this room is really old-fashioned and with bits of paper that you've probably seen and we've moaned on about during the day. So if you could fill them in, there's some more by the desk. And write whatever you want, that would be great, because that measures everything. The folks at the back from Kinura have been filming this, and it should be up somewhere on Tinterweb in the next couple of weeks, and we will send everybody who registered for the event the link. And the very last thing I'd like to say is that Chinwag is running a digital mission to New York from the 18th to 22nd of February in 2013. I believe there are some fashiony type businesses in New York. The digital missions are
and kind of maybe customers too.
Yeah, a few.
Just a few.
Digital missions are designed to help small, digitally focused firms, but that's quite a broad church, expand into overseas markets. And we are going to have a mixer event with more information about that trip in the next couple of weeks. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye on your email. Oh, and we're going to have, in fact, Dean from Nuji came. Which one did you come to, Dean? Oh, they go so quickly, they're a blur, but very useful, I hope. Yeah. So keep an eye out for that. And I guess my biggest thanks is for you guys for turning up and being so forthright in questions and chatting. It's been brilliant. And anybody interested in music as well, we're back here on Friday for a similar event with a musical twist.
So have a super evening.
Thank you.